For the last 3 months, my son has called me every single night. Not a night missed. The clock would strike 10:05 p.m. and my phone would light up with his name. And every single time, he'd ask the same chilling question, "Mom, are you alone?" If I said yes, the line would go dead. He'd just hang up. If I said no, his voice would sharpen. Insisting on knowing who was with me last night, I broke the pattern. I lied and told him I was alone. I never could have imagined that one simple lie would be the very thing that saved me from losing everything. But before I go on, make sure you're subscribed to the channel and let me know in the comments where you're watching this from. I love seeing how far our stories travel. My name is Clara Miller. I'm 60 years old, and until 3 months ago, I thought I knew my only son, Leo, inside and out. He was always a quiet boy, thoughtful and reserved, but he was never distant. Not from me. That all began to shift after my husband, Robert, passed away 4 years ago. At first, the grief was a strange kind of glue that held us together, two shipwrecked souls clinging to the same piece of wreckage. But then slowly, almost imperceptibly, Leo started to drift away. Now, at 34, he had become something else entirely. He was protective. But it wasn't a comforting kind of protection. It was suffocating, almost obsessive, focused on my finances, my daily routine, and most of all, on who I spent my time with. It all started on a perfectly ordinary Thursday in March. I was curled up on the sofa, watching a documentary about humpback whales, when my cell phone buzzed on the coffee table. The screen glowed with a picture of Leo. "Mom, are you alone?" It was the first thing out of his mouth. No hello, no how are you. The question hung in the air, sharp and strange. I found it odd, but I answered casually enough. "Yes, honey. Why?" Click. He hung up without another word. I just stared at my phone, a deep sense of confusion washing over me. I tried calling him back, but it went straight to his voicemail. I sent a quick text asking if everything was okay, if something had happened, but my screen remained blank. No reply. The next night, like clockwork, 10:05 p.m., my phone rang again. "Mom, are you alone?" His voice was flat, devoid of emotion. "Yes, Leo. What's going on? You're starting to scare me." Again, the click of him hanging up. On the third day, I decided I wasn't going to be alone. I invited my next-door neighbor, Maria, over for a cup of tea. When Leo called, I was ready. "No, Maria is here with me." There was a short, sharp silence on the other end. Then, in a voice I barely recognized, he asked, "Just Maria. Is there anyone else?" "Yes, just her. Leo, what is happening? You need to talk to me." "Nothing, Mom. Just checking on you. Are you both okay? Are the doors locked?" His concern felt less like care and more like an interrogation. "Yes, honey, everything is fine." "Okay, good night then." And that's how the ritual began. Every single night at 10:05 p.m., Leo would call with that same question. If I said I was alone, he'd hang up. If I said I had company, he wanted a full report of who was with me. I tried to press him to understand the reason for this bizarre behavior, but he always dodged the conversation, just saying he was worried about me. I mentioned it to Maria, who suggested that Leo might be dealing with some kind of psychological issue, maybe an obsessive-compulsive disorder triggered by stress. I gently suggested he seek some help, but he flatly denied having any problems. The weeks turned into a month, and the calls continued. Punctual and unnerving, I tried to trace where they were coming from, but he was using a private number. When we saw each other in person for our weekly Sunday brunch, he acted completely normal, as if these nightly cryptic calls didn't exist. If I tried to bring it up, he'd skillfully change the subject or just brush it off as a son's concern for his widowed mother. It was during this period that I started noticing other strange things. Small things that made me question my own mind. A drawer in my study that I was certain I had closed was left slightly ajar. The portrait of Robert on my bedside table was tilted at a different angle. The back door, which I rarely used, had faint scratches around the lock, as if someone had been fumbling with it. Was it just my paranoia? Were Leo's strange calls finally getting to me, making me see ghosts in every shadow? In the middle of May, Leo came to visit on a Sunday afternoon. He brought my favorite cheesecake and suggested we go over some of my finances. He'd always been a numbers man, having built a career as a financial analyst, so I welcomed his help. It was then, as he was casually flipping through my bank statements, that he dropped the bombshell. "Maybe it's time you sold the house, Mom," he said, not looking at me. "It's too big for you on your own. We could find a smaller, more secure condo, maybe closer to me in Chicago." I felt a cold prickle of unease. "But I love this house, Leo. Your father and I built our lives here in Denver. I have my garden, my neighbors." "We need to think about your future, your safety," he pressed, glancing over some papers. "In fact, I've already been looking at a few places in Lincoln Park that I think you'd really like." The suggestion deeply unsettled me. Leo had never been pushy, but here he was, practically planning my life for me. I thanked him for his concern, but told him firmly that I had absolutely no intention of moving. The look he gave me, a flash of pure frustration mixed with something else, something cold and unreadable, sent a shiver down my spine. He quickly recovered his composure, smiled, and said he just wanted what was best for me. But in that moment, I felt like I was looking at a complete stranger. By June, I'd made a decision. I secretly installed a few discreet security cameras at strategic points around the house. I didn't tell a soul, not even Maria. I had to understand what was going on. The calls continued, and I started alternating my answers, sometimes saying I was alone, sometimes with company, just to observe Leo's reactions. In the first week of July, everything changed. I was reviewing the camera footage when I saw something that made my blood run cold. At 1:20 a.m., a hooded figure used a key to let themselves in through the back door. The figure moved with a chilling familiarity through the dark rooms, went straight to my study and started rifling through the drawers. From the build, the posture, the way they moved, I recognized him instantly. It was Leo. My own son was breaking into my home in the dead of night. I checked the recordings from the previous days and discovered it wasn't the first time he'd been inside at least 3 times that week. He would always check to make sure I was asleep, search for documents in the study, and sometimes he would just sit in the dark in the living room for a few minutes before leaving. What was he looking for? What did these calls really mean? Why this obsessive focus on whether I was alone? Last night, I decided to break the pattern. When Leo called, right on schedule at 10:05 p.m., and asked if I was alone, I lied. Yes, I'm alone. But I wasn't. Sarah, my lawyer and a dear friend for many years, was sitting right beside me. After I'd seen the footage, I'd called her in a panic, desperate for help. She was just as disturbed as I was by what she saw. As usual, Leo hung up as soon as I said I was alone. Sarah and I looked at each other, not fully understanding the significance of it, but we both knew something was deeply, terribly wrong. We decided to wait and see if he would come again. At 10:40 p.m., we heard the faint click of the back door opening. Sarah and I hid in my bedroom closet, leaving the door open just a crack to watch. I was trembling, a sickening mixture of fear and outrage churning inside me. My own son, my only family, sneaking into my house like a common thief. For what? Leo moved silently down the hallway, bypassing the bedroom without a glance. We heard him in the study, the quiet shuffle of papers, the soft opening and closing of drawers. After a few minutes, he returned and stopped right outside my bedroom door. My heart was pounding so hard I was terrified he could hear it through the wood. He pushed the door open slowly and scanned the room. The street light filtering through the window cast his face in a pale, eerie glow. The familiar warmth I knew was gone. His eyes were cold, calculating. He walked over to my bed, saw that it was empty, and a flicker of confusion crossed his face before he quickly backed out of the room. "Mom," he called out softly down the hall, "are you home?" We remained frozen in the closet. We heard his hurried footsteps checking the other rooms, then the sound of the back door closing. When we were certain he was gone, we emerged from our hiding spot. "We need to call the police," Sarah said, her hand already on her phone. "Wait," I stopped her, my hand on her arm. "He's my son. I need to understand what's happening first." "Clara, he is breaking into your house in the middle of the night. This isn't normal." I knew she was right. I know, I whispered, tears finally starting to fall. "But there has to be an explanation. Maybe he's in some kind of trouble. Maybe he needs help." Sarah looked at me with compassion, but her voice was firm. "Or maybe you're the one in danger. Have you considered that? These calls, the nightly break-ins, his insistence on you selling the house. Clara, something is very wrong." I agreed to report it, but I begged for one day to confront Leo myself. Sarah hesitated, but eventually agreed, on the condition that I wouldn't stay alone. She would sleep over, and the next day we would go together to talk to Leo at his office, a public place where I would feel safer. I couldn't sleep. I spent the night replaying the last few months in my head, trying to pinpoint when Leo had started to change. Was it after Robert's death? No, Leo had grieved, of course, but he'd seemed to handle it in a healthy way. Was it after his marriage to Chloe ended just over a year ago? He was hurt, yes, but he didn't show any of this obsessive behavior. What had happened to my boy? In the morning, I called the financial firm where Leo worked. The receptionist, who knew me, sounded surprised. "Mrs. Miller, Leo hasn't been working here for almost 4 months. He resigned back in March." I felt the floor drop out from under me. 4 months? Exactly when the nightly calls had started. Leo had been telling me all week how busy he was at work. He mentioned clients. He talked about projects. "Do you know why he left?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. "Not exactly. There were some issues. Maybe it's best if you speak with Mr. Evans, the director." I thanked her and hung up. I looked at Sarah, who had heard everything. "We need to go to his apartment," I said. "Clara, if he's not at work, he'll probably be there. It's too dangerous." "Then we'll go when he's not there. He always goes to the gym on Wednesday mornings. Today is Wednesday." Sarah didn't look convinced, but she agreed to come with me. On the way to Leo's apartment, I called Mr. Evans, the director of the firm. He knew me from holiday parties and sounded concerned when he heard my voice. "Clara, I'm so sorry about what happened. Leo was always one of our top performers, but..." "But what, Mr. Evans? What happened?" There was a long pause on the other end. There were some discrepancies in the accounts he was managing, embezzled funds. We confronted Leo, and he confessed. It was substantial. The clients involved agreed not to press charges if he returned the money and resigned. Out of respect for you and for Robert's memory, we decided to keep the matter quiet. I thanked him mechanically and hung up. My son had embezzled money from clients. My son, who grew up hearing Robert talk about honesty and integrity, who cried at his father's funeral, saying he wanted to honor his memory. "How much do you think he took?" Sarah asked as we parked near Leo's building. "It doesn't matter how much. What worries me is why he did it, and what does any of this have to do with him breaking into my house?" We used the spare key I had, one Leo had given me years ago. Ironically, for emergencies, the apartment was surprisingly neat and organized, not what I'd expect from someone in the midst of a crisis. On his desk, we found a stack of overdue bills and debt collection notices. Apparently, despite the embezzled money, Leo was in serious financial trouble. In the bedroom, Sarah found something even more disturbing. It was a folder containing all of my personal documents, the deed to my house, bank statements, insurance policies, including the life insurance policy Robert had left in my name, a considerable sum. "Clara," Sarah said, holding up a document, "did you sign a power of attorney giving Leo authority over your financial decisions?" "No, never." She showed me the paper. It was my signature or something very close to it. A sophisticated forgery. "He could use this to sell your house without your consent, transfer your money." Sarah's phone rang, interrupting her. It was her assistant from the law firm. She stepped away to answer, and I continued to sift through the papers. That's when I found it, tucked between the documents, a newspaper clipping. The article, dated 2 weeks prior, reported the suspicious death of an elderly woman in Austin. The police were investigating her son, who had recently sold his mother's house and transferred a large sum of money into his accounts. The woman was found dead in her new apartment, apparently due to a gas leak. My blood ran cold. Could it be a coincidence? I slipped the clipping into my purse, trying to keep the panic from overwhelming me. Sarah came back, and we continued searching the apartment. In the bathroom, we found several prescription bottles. Some were for anti-anxiety medication, but others I didn't recognize. I took photos of the labels with my phone to research later. "I think we've seen enough," Sarah said, glancing at her watch. "Leo could be back any minute." Before we left, I decided to take one last look in the bedroom. That's when I noticed something odd in the closet. A toolbox, partially visible behind his clothes. I opened it and found basic tools: screwdrivers, pliers, and a small, unlabeled glass vial containing a clear liquid. Next to it was a sheaf of papers. They were instructions for handling a type of sedative, detailing dosages and effects. "Sarah?" I called out, my voice trembling. She came over quickly and looked at the vial. "Don't touch that," she said, grabbing a tissue to wrap it in. "We're taking this to be analyzed." Just then, we heard the sound of a key in the front door. Sarah and I looked at each other, frozen. "Leo should be at the gym," I whispered. "Apparently he changed his plans." Quickly, Sarah put the vial in her purse. There was no way to get out without passing through the living room. I looked around desperately and pointed to the bedroom window. It led to a fire escape. "Let's go," I whispered, already sliding the window open. We climbed silently down the fire escape, trying not to make a sound. Leo's apartment was on the 3rd floor, and just as we reached the ground, we heard the bedroom window slam shut above us. Leo had discovered our escape. "Run," Sarah said, and we sprinted to the car. I jumped in as she started the engine. In the rearview mirror, I saw Leo emerge from the building, looking around wildly. He spotted us and started running in our direction. "Mom!" he yelled. "Wait, I can explain." Sarah floored it, leaving him behind. "Where are we going?" I asked, my heart hammering against my ribs. "To a friend's lab. We need to know what's in this vial. After that, straight to the police station." On the way, I called Maria, asking her to check on my house. I was worried Leo might go there. She agreed and said she'd call as soon as she arrived. At the lab, Sarah's friend, a retired forensic chemist named Dr. Peterson, met us with a look of concern. "I need you to analyze this as fast as you can," Sarah explained, handing him the vial. "We suspect it's some kind of sedative, or worse." Dr. Peterson nodded and took the vial away. While we waited, I showed Sarah the pictures I'd taken of the medications. "This one here," she pointed out, "is a powerful psychiatric drug." "For personality disorders? Hallucinations?" "Leo never mentioned any psychiatric problems," I replied, stunned. "The prescription date is only 3 months ago, and from the looks of it, he's not taking it regularly. Most of the pills are still in the bottles." My phone rang. It was Maria. "Clara, I'm at your house. Everything looks fine, but there's something strange in your bedroom. Can you come over?" Sarah and I exchanged a worried glance. "We're on our way, Maria. Don't touch anything and don't let anyone in." Dr. Peterson returned with the preliminary results. "It's a cocktail of drugs," he explained, "mainly barbiturates and something that looks like a synthetic opioid. In small doses, it would cause drowsiness and confusion. In larger doses, it would be fatal. And the worst part is, it would be difficult to detect in a routine autopsy." We thanked Dr. Peterson and promised to return later for a formal report. On the way to my house, Sarah was visibly tense. "Clara, your son might be planning to kill you." The words landed like stones in my stomach. Why? For the insurance money? For the house? We don't know the details, but the combination of the forged power of attorney, the newspaper clipping about that other death, the drugs, it's a very clear pattern. Tears streamed down my face. How did we get to this point? What happened to my son? Sarah squeezed my hand briefly. I don't know, Clara, but right now we need to ensure your safety. We arrived at my house to find Maria waiting, looking shaken. She led us to my bedroom. I was looking for your phone charger and I happened to look under the bed, she explained. That's when I saw this. I knelt and looked where she was pointing. Underneath the bed was a small electronic device connected to a thin tube that ran to the wall. Following the tube, we discovered it led to the gas valve for the bedroom heater. It's a timer, Sarah said, examining the device, programmed to open the gas valve at 3 a.m. I remembered the newspaper clipping, the woman found dead from a gas leak. How long has this been here? I asked, fighting back the rising panic. I don't know for sure, Sarah replied. But Leo was here last night, as we saw on the cameras. Maria covered her mouth with her hands, horrified. Do you think he wanted to... I think we need to call the police now, Sarah said, already dialing, and you are not staying here tonight. While she was on the phone with the police, my cell phone rang. It was Leo. I showed the screen to Sarah, who nodded, signaling for me to answer. She motioned for me to put it on speaker. Leo? I answered, trying to control the tremble in my voice. Mom, he said, his tone strangely calm. What were you doing in my apartment? I was worried about you, son. Worried? Why? I'm perfectly fine. You lost your job 4 months ago and didn't tell me. You've been breaking into my house at night. That's not fine, Leo. There was a pause. Who told you I lost my job? Mr. Evans told me everything about the embezzled money, the deal you made to leave quietly. Another pause, this one longer. You shouldn't have meddled in this, Mom. Everything was under control. I had a plan. What plan, Leo? What is happening to you? I can't talk about it over the phone. I need to see you in person. Sarah was shaking her head vigorously. I'm with Sarah now, I replied. We can meet at her office. No, his voice hardened. Just the two of us. This is a family matter. Come to my apartment now. Leo, I'm scared. We found things in your apartment and here at my house. Things that suggest you might be planning to hurt me. A short, almost scornful laugh. Hurt you? You're my mother. I'm trying to protect you. The world out there is dangerous, full of people who want to take advantage of women living alone. Like that woman in the newspaper? The one who died from a gas leak, whose son sold her house and took the money? Total silence from the other end. It was you, wasn't it? I pressed on, my voice shaking. You have something to do with her death. I don't know what you're talking about. The device in my bedroom, Leo, to open the gas valve while I slept. You installed it. You don't understand anything, he shot back, his voice now thick with rage. It's all connected. They're all out there, waiting, watching, wanting what's ours, what's rightfully mine. Who is they, Leo? It doesn't matter. What matters is that soon, this will all be over. We'll be safe. You need help, son. We found your medication. Why didn't you tell me you were in psychiatric treatment? Those pills make me slow, confused. I can't see the truth when I take them. The patterns, the connections, it all gets hazy. I glanced at Sarah, who nodded encouragingly. The police are on their way, she whispered. Leo, please, let's meet with your doctor. Together, we can sort this out. There's no time, he replied, a note of urgency in his voice. They're closing in. I have to act today, tonight. What are you going to do, Leo? I'm going to do what's necessary. You'll understand later, Mom. You'll thank me. The call ended abruptly. Sarah, Maria, and I stared at each other, stunned. He's clearly in a psychotic crisis, Sarah said. He needs to be hospitalized immediately. The doorbell rang. It was the police. 2 officers came in and examined the device in the bedroom. They took our statements, photographed everything, and removed the timer. We're going to issue a warrant for your son's arrest, ma'am, one of the officers informed me. Based on this and your testimony, there's sufficient evidence of attempted murder. He needs psychiatric help, I insisted. He's sick. That will be determined by a medical evaluation after his arrest. For now, we strongly advise you not to stay in this house." I agreed and thanked them. After the police left, Sarah suggested I stay at her place for a few days. Maria offered to pack a bag of clothes and essentials for me. While I waited in Sarah's car, I received a text from Leo. "It doesn't matter where you hide, Mom. I'm going to find you. I'm going to save you from them." I showed the message to Sarah when she returned. "I've already forwarded it to the detective," she said, starting the car. "They're going to step up the search. Clara, your son is a real danger right now, not just to you, but possibly to others." On the way to Sarah's house, I tried to process everything that had happened. How does a mother not notice her own son is suffering to the point of developing delusions? How did I not see the signs? "Don't blame yourself," Sarah said, as if reading my mind. "These disorders can develop silently, especially in adults. Leo was clearly very good at hiding the symptoms until he just couldn't anymore. But why now? What triggered it? Maybe the financial stress after losing his job, maybe the divorce. Sometimes there isn't a single identifiable trigger." We arrived at Sarah's house, a cozy home in a gated community in Boulder. Her husband David greeted us with tea and a supportive hug. Maria arrived shortly after with my things. "Do you think he'll come here?" I asked, feeling guilty for dragging more people into this nightmare. "It's unlikely," replied David, who worked as a security consultant. "He doesn't know where Sarah lives, does he?" "Not that I know of," I answered. "We've never visited together." "To be safe, I've already alerted the community security," Sarah said. "They have his description and photo." Later, we heard from the detective. The police had gone to Leo's apartment, but he wasn't there. Neighbors reported seeing him leave in a hurry with a backpack. His car was also gone from the garage. "We've issued an alert," the detective reported over the phone. "All patrols are on the lookout. If he tries to make contact, let us know immediately." I spent a restless night, waking at every small sound. In the morning, Sarah brought me the newspaper. On the front page was Leo's picture with the headline, "Man Wanted for Attempted Murder of His Own Mother." I wept as I read the article, which detailed the recent events and mentioned the possible connection to another similar case. "This is a nightmare," I murmured. Sarah's phone rang. It was the detective again. "We found his car abandoned near the highway," he reported. "Signs indicate he may have hitchhiked or used public transport. We're expanding the search to neighboring cities." The hours crawled by. Sarah had to go to her office, but David stayed with me, working from home. His quiet presence was a comfort, though I could barely concentrate on anything. My thoughts were constantly with Leo. Where was he? What was he planning? How had things come to this? Late in the afternoon, Maria came to visit, bringing some clothes I'd forgotten and an old photo album she thought might comfort me. Flipping through it, I saw Leo in different stages of his life. A smiling baby, a focused child building sandcastles, a proud teenager at his graduation. "Look at him!" I showed Maria a photo of Leo at 16 grinning next to his father. How did that boy turn into this? "The human mind is a mystery, Clara," Maria replied, holding my hand. "Maybe he was struggling for a long time and just hiding it from all of us." My cell phone rang, displaying an unknown number. I glanced at David, who nodded and moved closer to listen. I answered and put it on speaker. "Hello? Clara Miller?" A male voice I didn't recognize. "This is Dr. Coleman from the St. Teresa Psychiatric Hospital." My heart leaped. "Yes, this is she. I'm calling about your son, Leo Miller. He voluntarily presented himself to our emergency unit about 2 hours ago." "He's there?" I asked in disbelief. "Is he okay?" "Physically, yes. Mentally, he's in crisis. He stated that he's been having psychotic episodes for several months and stopped taking his prescribed medication. He asked to be admitted because, in his words, he's losing control and is afraid he's going to hurt someone." I felt a wave of both relief and profound sadness. David squeezed my shoulder in support. "Did he mention anything about me?" I asked hesitantly. "Yes, in fact. He expressed great concern for your safety, but in a confused and paranoid way, he mentioned people who are watching and conspiracies. These are classic symptoms of the condition we're observing. Did he mention trying to hurt me? A brief pause. Mrs. Miller, I'm aware of the police report. Leo confessed to installing a device in your home and planning actions I'd rather not detail over the phone. We are in contact with the authorities. He will remain under our supervision and custody while we evaluate his mental state. Can I see him? I asked, my voice thick with emotion. We don't recommend visits at this initial stage. He's quite agitated, and we need to stabilize him first, perhaps in a few days. I would like you to come to the hospital tomorrow to discuss his history and plan his treatment. I agreed and wrote down the address and time suggested by the doctor. After hanging up, I collapsed into Maria's arms, sobbing. David was already on the phone with Sarah and the detective, updating them on the situation. He turned himself in, I murmured between sobs. There's still a part of him in there that knows he needs help. The next morning, Sarah accompanied me to the hospital. Dr. Coleman, a middle-aged man with kind eyes, met us in his office. Leo is suffering from a schizoaffective disorder, he explained. Based on what we've been able to assess so far, the symptoms likely began about a year ago, perhaps after his divorce, but they intensified in recent months. How did I not notice? I lamented. We saw each other regularly. People with this disorder can seem perfectly normal for long periods. The delusions tend to be focused in specific areas, while the rest of their mental functioning remains relatively intact. And now, he will begin an intensive treatment of appropriate medication and therapy. The road is long, but with adherence to treatment, many patients manage to control their symptoms well. And what about the criminal charges? The doctor sighed. That will depend on the justice system. However, given his mental state and the fact that he turned himself in voluntarily, there's a good chance he'll be ordered into compulsory treatment rather than conventional prison. Leaving the hospital, I felt strangely lighter, despite the gravity of the situation. At least now Leo was safe, no longer a danger to himself or others, and he would receive the help he so desperately needed. In the following weeks, I immersed myself in reading about schizophrenia and related disorders, determined to better understand what my son was facing. I joined support groups for family members and spoke at length with Dr. Coleman about how to aid in Leo's recovery. A month after his admission, I was finally cleared to visit him. I was nervous, not knowing what to expect. The Leo who entered the visiting room looked thinner, with deep circles under his eyes, but his eyes were clearer than I had seen them in months. "Mom," he said softly, not daring to come closer. "Son," I replied, opening my arms. He hesitated, but then he came forward and hugged me. I felt his body tremble with silent sobs. "I remember everything," he whispered. "What I planned to do. How could I?" "It wasn't you," I replied, stroking his hair like I did when he was little. "It was the illness." We sat down, and Leo spoke with difficulty about how the symptoms had begun. Small suspicions, then invasive thoughts, until voices in his head convinced him there was a conspiracy to harm me. In his mind, twisted by the disease, the only way to protect me was to free me from this world. When I stopped taking the medication, everything got worse so quickly, he explained. I started to believe there were connections between random events. I read about that woman in the newspaper, and somehow my mind created a narrative where I needed to do the same. "Why the calls?" I asked. "Why always ask if I was alone?" In my delusions, I believed they could be with you, monitoring you. If you said you were with someone, I needed to know who it was to verify they weren't one of them. He rubbed his eyes. It makes no sense now, but at the time, it seemed perfectly logical. The trial was approaching, and the tension was mounting. The story had attracted local media attention, with sensationalist headlines like, "Son plotted to murder mother for insurance," and "Delusional analyst nearly kills his own mom." It was painful to see our family tragedy turned into public entertainment. Meanwhile, I tried to resume my routine, giving private tutoring sessions as a retired teacher. The return to a semblance of normalcy helped keep me grounded. One night, I received an unexpected call. It was Chloe, Leo's ex-wife. "Clara, I heard what happened. I'm in shock." "Chloe?" I answered, surprised. I hadn't seen her since the divorce. "How are you?" "I'm okay, all things considered. Clara, I need to tell you something. Something that might help you understand what happened to Leo." We agreed to meet at a cafe the next day. Chloe arrived on time, as elegant as I remembered, but with a tense expression. "I've been blaming myself ever since I heard," she began. "Our marriage didn't just end because of incompatibility, like everyone thinks. It ended because I realized Leo was changing, having strange behaviors, becoming suspicious of things that made no sense." "What kind of behaviors?" "At first, it was small things. He started checking the locks repeatedly before bed. He began to believe colleagues at work were conspiring against him. Then he started having episodes where he would just stare into space, muttering to himself." A knot formed in my chest. "Why did you never tell me?" "He made me promise not to tell anyone. He said he was just stressed from work. When I suggested we seek help, he got furious, accusing me of trying to control him like the others. It was terrifying, Clara. I didn't recognize the man I married. That was why she asked for the divorce." She nodded, tears in her eyes. "I tried to convince him to get help, but he refused. The divorce was triggered by a terrible fight where he accused me of being part of the conspiracy. I was afraid, truly afraid." "Do you think he was already sick back then?" "I'm sure of it now. The signs were all there. I should have insisted more, maybe told you, but..." She wiped away a tear. "I just wanted distance." I held her hand. "We can't go back in time. The important thing is that he's getting treatment now." The conversation gave me another piece of the puzzle. Leo's problems had started long before I had ever imagined. At the preliminary hearing, the judge listened to the doctor's testimonies and the detective's account of the evidence. Leo appeared, medicated and visibly dejected. His lawyer, Mr. Leal, whom Sarah had recommended, argued, "Your Honor, the medical evidence is conclusive. Mr. Miller suffers from a severe psychiatric disorder. He lacked the capacity to understand the illicit nature of his acts." The prosecutor countered that despite the illness, there was meticulous planning in Leo's actions, suggesting some level of discernment. The judge ruled that Leo would remain hospitalized under judicial custody until the full trial. It wasn't the best outcome, but it wasn't the worst. At least he would continue to receive proper treatment. "We'll get an insanity plea," Mr. Leal assured me. "The medical reports are solid, and the fact that he turned himself in counts for a lot." One afternoon while organizing the study, I found an envelope I didn't recognize. Inside were more of Leo's financial documents, bank statements, loan agreements, and a life insurance policy in my name that I knew nothing about, dated just 2 weeks before his admission. It was for an enormous sum. I took the papers to Sarah. After examining them, she explained. He took on massive debt in the last few months, loans from different banks, maxed out credit cards. He used the money to buy this life insurance policy for you, with himself as the beneficiary. "How much?" I asked, feeling a chill. $1.5 million. The amount made me dizzy. "The most disturbing part," she continued, "is that the policy has a specific clause covering accidental death, including gas leaks." Nausea washed over me. The scale of my son's plan was more calculated than I could have imagined. This would complicate the case, showing premeditation. The trial lasted 3 days. Medical experts, former colleagues, and forensic specialists testified. Leo himself took the stand and spoke with a surprising clarity about his illness. "It was like living in 2 worlds at once," he explained. "One world where I still functioned, worked, and had normal conversations, and another world just as real to me then, where there were conspiracies, threats, and where I needed to protect my mother from dangers only I could see. On the final day, the lawyers made their closing arguments. The judge announced he would deliver the verdict the next afternoon. It was the longest night of my life. The next day, the courtroom was packed. When the judge entered, a tense silence fell. This court finds the defendant, Leo Miller, not guilty by reason of insanity at the time of the crime, the judge announced. Tears of relief streamed down my face. Leo closed his eyes, his shoulders visibly relaxing. However, the judge continued, considering the grave nature of the actions, the court orders the defendant to be committed to a forensic psychiatric hospital for a minimum period of 3 years, subject to periodic re-evaluation. It was the best possible outcome. Leo wouldn't go to prison. He would get the long-term treatment he needed in a secure environment. I was able to hug him briefly before they took him away. "Thank you, Mom," he whispered, "for not giving up on me." "Never," I promised. 2 years have passed since that day. Leo is still committed, but he's in a semi-open regime now, which allows for extended visits and even short, supervised outings. His progress has been remarkable. During one of our recent talks, I asked him something that still puzzled me. "Son, those nightly calls, why did you always hang up when I said I was alone?" He thought for a moment. "The voices told me that if I stayed on the line too long, they could trace the call. In my delusional mind, checking on you and hanging up quickly was a form of protection." And the strange logic of his illness finally clicked into place for me, like the last piece of a painful puzzle. Today, sitting on the porch of my renovated house, I feel a strange mixture of pain and gratitude. Pain for the suffering the illness caused my son, for the nights of terror I lived through, for a relationship that must be slowly rebuilt on fragile trust, and gratitude for that one moment of intuition that made me break the pattern. For lying when I said I was alone, even though Sarah was with me. That simple lie set in motion the events that saved my life, and possibly Leo's as well, pulling him from a psychotic spiral that could have ended even more tragically. My phone rings. It's Leo calling from the hospital, not at 10:05 p.m. anymore, but at random times during the day, as his treatment routine allows, no longer asking if I'm alone, but sharing small bits of progress, modest plans for the future, happy memories that are slowly resurfacing as the fog of his illness dissipates. "Hi, son," I answer, grateful for the chance to hear his voice once more. Life is made of patterns that give us comfort and security, but sometimes breaking a pattern is the only thing that can save us. Now, if you enjoyed this story, please hit that subscribe button and tell me in the comments which part left you speechless. Oh, and don't forget to become a member for exclusive videos I don't post here. I'll see you there.